Perhaps the worst context of all is that Blake Lively has used her position of power and status in Hollywood to throw a survivor of abuse under the bus in exchange for an excuse for her bad PR tactics. That survivor was Justin Baldoni, who had his story removed from a podcast after Blake made false allegations against him.
It got very emotionally abusive. I experienced trauma in that relationship.
As someone who's been through abuse myself, the whole thing makes me sick. As far as I'm concerned, she should grab her florals and get out of my face. At last night's Time magazine gala, Blake Lively told a vague story of her mother's survival through abuse. Something that, if she had managed to do while promoting her film about domestic violence, would surely have avoided the catastrophe of her own making that she's stuck in now. What could and should have been a touching story fell flat in light of Lively's false allegations. Lively was, for whatever reason, named to Time magazine's most influential people of 2025, even though it's only April. Time cited Lively's undisclosed civil rights activism and a donation she made to the NAACP 6 years ago when people were upset with her about getting married on a plantation. And they were apparently impressed with the excuse she made about not learning about racism in school. In Los Angeles. Unfortunately, she couldn't find a black friend to attend the summit with her, so she scrapped the idea of civil rights activism and decided to skip to using her mother's story of abuse while vaguely alluding to her own life over the past 2 years, as if agreeing to look at an image of a water birth with no body parts being shown is somehow the same.
I have so much to say about the last 2 years of my life, but tonight is not the forum. What I will speak to separately is the feeling of being a woman who has a voice today, and since I could speak, because of the pain, caution, and fight of the many women who have paved the way and the men who stood beside them. Millions I will never know the name of, because every life, every act, big or small, affects another. Before I say more, I want to warn that I will speak about tonight covers trauma, so please feel free to step away if you need. My life was influenced most by my mother, sitting here tonight, Willie Elaine McAlpin. She's an eternal optimist, and she's always leaving me messages, hooping and hollering and saying, "Woo, life's just a bowl of cherries." It's true, always. And she'll get your number tonight. She'll leave you those messages, so please be warned. But at her urging and her unwavering bravery, she wanted me to share with you that she is a survivor of the worst crime someone can commit against a woman. I've watched her conceal her raw and undeserved shame my entire life. So as her daughter, being asked to share this today is monumental. If we name it, we change it. Just as our fellow Time 100 honoree, the incredible Giselle Pellicot, put it to every woman who understood, it's not for us to have shame, it's for them.
Perhaps the worst context of all is that Blake Lively has used her position of power and status in Hollywood to throw a survivor of abuse under the bus in exchange for an excuse for her bad PR tactics. That survivor was Justin Baldoni, who had his story removed from a podcast after Blake made false allegations against him. Justin Baldoni's voice and story deserve to be heard.
It was a very bad relationship, and I kind of contorted myself and my personality to be what she wanted. I had strong values and opinions and beliefs going in, and those were very easily manipulated and reshaped to the point where a few months in, I completely lost any sense of self that I had left. And it got very emotionally abusive. I experienced sexual trauma in that relationship, then wrestled with that trauma for the rest of my life because in my head, a man can't experience sexual trauma at the hands of a woman. And it's also the way that society has kind of made me feel that, it's only the other way around, when in reality, yeah, it can happen. There are lines that can be crossed and take advantage of somebody and to be manipulated. But I told myself for 15 years after that wasn't actually what happened, and, that I did want it, and all of the things that women have been feeling and experiencing for a long time. I was hoping to save myself for marriage, and that's as detailed as I'll get into the story.
The removal of that episode was one of many hits Baldoni took as a result of Lively's shameful and selfish actions. As someone who's been through abuse myself, the whole thing makes me sick. And the last thing I'll say for myself here is that I don't wish Blake Lively any harm or harassment, but as far as I'm concerned, she should grab her florals and get out of my face. In fact, a lot of us feel that way. And we're here to stand up for Justin Baldoni the way that he has stood up for so many others and helped our cause.
I am a survivor of DV. I was in an abusive relationship, my first relationship. The man was much older than me, no excuses, but I lost, a child from being beaten so badly. I've been experienced behavior in different ways that we've seen Justin Baldoni experience, and I'm one of millions. And also as a survivor of DV, I just can't stay silent anymore.
I too have experienced emotional abuse, SHSA, domestic violence, and early childhood rape. The abuse of power has to come to an end. Thank you, Justin, for exposing the truth and saying no more.
About 10 years ago, I was a victim of domestic violence at the hands of an ex-boyfriend. I believe and support Justin Baldoni.
I'm a survivor of DV, and I support Justin Baldoni, and I'm not a bot. Thank you for everything that you're doing for our cause.
I am a mother, and I believe in justice for real victims. It's not about being a man or a woman. It's about being harmed and manipulated for someone else's benefit. And yet, in today's world, innocent men can become targets of false accusations, punished not for their actions, but because someone else chose to wield a lie as a weapon. At the same time, real victims, men and women alike, deserve to be believed, supported, and given justice. But when powerful people manipulate the system, they don't just harm the falsely accused, they also make it harder for true survivors to be heard. No innocent person should have their life destroyed by lies, and no real victim should have their story drowned out by those who exploit the system. It's time to stand for truth, because justice should serve the innocent, not to be twisted as a weapon against them.
I was sexually abused as a child in a very high-profile case by an Australian actor called Robert Hughes. He went to prison and was recently released, and I was one of the hundreds of victims that came forward in that case. Despite that, I support Justin Baldoni because I believe that false accusers are just as big an enemy to victims as the abusers are.
I am a survivor of sexual abuse as a child. I also was abused emotionally and mentally, and those traumas have carried throughout my life. I've done my best to learn to live with them, but it's challenging. And I want to thank Justin Baldoni for his efforts of speaking out for the masses. I come from a generation that these were not spoken about or addressed, and now hearing him and what he's going through sickens me. So I look forward to the day that he is exonerated, and I pray that it doesn't follow him for the rest of his life, and his accusers are brought to justice.